Good morning, everyone. If everybody could find a seat, we'd like to get the program started. For the kids, there's the Camp Nagila program already started in the other room. So if the kids want to go join there now, now's the time. Good morning. Oh, now I really can't see. My name is Zevi David, and I'm the volunteer coordinator here at Maot Chitim. And I'd like to welcome you to the Maot Chitim Volunteer Appreciation Brunch. Maot Chitim, which literally means money for wheat, is a tradition that began during the Second Temple era, which ensured that everyone had matzah for the Pesach Seder. In continuation of this tradition, this past Pesach, Maot Chitim of Greater Chicago delivered nearly 5,000 food packages that helped 15,000 people celebrate the holiday. Now, thanks to a generous donor who is covering the entire cost of this brunch, and the help of Rabbi Ehrman and our partners at the Agudas Yisrael of Illinois, we are able to serve up one more meal to thank all of you who made that possible. For 109 years, Maot Chitim of Greater Chicago has served our community, a community that continues to grow and now stretches from the Wisconsin border down to Champaign. But as the number of people who need support grows, so do the numbers of those who step up to help. Over the course of a month, nearly 1,000 people from all over the Greater Chicago area and northern Indiana gave up part of their work days, school days. Apparently, it's not hard to get kids to skip school to go do something. And weekends to make our delivery a success. Some of you came once, some of you came multiple times, and some of you helped without ever setting foot in the warehouse. And we couldn't have done it without each and every one of you. To give you an idea of how many different jobs and people need to help so that we can have a successful delivery, I'd like each of you to raise your hands when I mention a job that you helped with. So we started, before anything begins, we have our box makers. Do you have any box makers here? We have those who schlep the boxes to and from the lines to get them filled, and once they're filled. Anybody help with that? Yay. We have those who pack the boxes. Oh, we got a lot of those. Yay. We have those who make sure to restock the tables so there's something for the packers to put into the boxes. Yeah. We got those who clean up. Those who break down the boxes are dumpster divers. Those are important jobs, and we can't do it without you. There you go. I started as a dumpster driver. Be careful, they make you a board member. We have those who stuff the information packets. All those information that goes out about the holidays on our tables. Those are very important. We thank you, those who do that. We have our egg checkers who come even when they can't get to the eggs to check them. We have those who load our cars and trucks for delivery. We have our truck drivers and our building crews who take the boxes out to specific locations for delivery. And lastly, we have our regular delivery people, those of you who come pick up boxes in your cars and take them out for delivery. And those are just the big jobs. 3 years ago, when I took over this position, I was nervous. How was I going to keep things moving? How was I going to make sure everything would be taken care of? But my fears were unfounded because of all of you. I thought I would have to chase people down to get them to help. Instead, 3 months before delivery, you'll start contacting me, asking for details about the delivery. You'll want to sign up for your shift for packing or make sure you still have your building. I'm in awe of your dedication and commitment to our community. After each delivery, I share a blessing with those I work with. May next holiday we go out of business because we are no longer needed. But while there is still a need, I know I can count on each of you to answer the call and help those less fortunate than ourselves. On behalf of the Board of Directors, and more importantly, our recipients, I would like to thank each of you for all your hard work and support. I would now like to call Masha Shepov, one of our new board members, to say a few words.
I'm a lot shorter, Zevi. Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone has enjoyed their breakfast. As Zevi said, I am a new board member, and it's been a tradition in my family for many, many years. My family immigrated from the former Soviet Union in the 1970s, and as the wave of the first Russian immigrants coming from a country where we didn't have an opportunity to be practicing Jews, we didn't have traditions. We didn't know what Pesach was. We didn't have an opportunity to celebrate Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah. And thanks to this organization and so many other organizations, like the ARC, we were able to make traditions. And I came here as an infant, so I don't remember how hard the traditions were to form, and I don't know how hard it was for them to transition into this world. But I know that by the time I had memories, one of the fondest memories that I had was volunteering here at Maot Chitim with my grandmother. My grandmother was fortunate that she was able to speak English decently well, and when she moved into a building in West Rogers Park for senior citizens, she became a building captain. And I remember from the age of about 4 or 5 years old, when I can remember, my job was basically to be a translator, and I went around and I sat and we waited for the truck to come. We would go to the community room, we would unlock and open up all the boxes and give everything to everybody. And I remember just as a little girl seeing how happy everybody was to get those boxes. And I remember going back to my grandmother's apartment because not only was she a volunteer, but she was also a recipient. And I remember how carefully she would take out every single little thing and how thankful she and everyone else were for those packages. And I remember my grandmother telling me how lucky we were not only to have this food, but to be able to finally be practicing Jews. And the other thing that was always amazing was just smelling those hallways in the days after those boxes came. You guys would not believe, I know that many of you come to the homes and you deliver, but you're not there to see what it's like in the days and the weeks after when especially the senior citizens are able to have their families come and to serve this amazing meal for them from the food that we all pack and deliver to them. And my grandmother was a building captain until 2001, and we came here in the mid-70s. So when she passed away, I came back and I started volunteering here, not only as a delivery person, but in the warehouse. And one of the things that I realized was I was the only Russian-speaking volunteer here, and when I would go into people's homes, even with my broken Russian, because it's not very good, they were so happy to have someone that they could actually communicate with. So one of the things that I've been doing as a board member is bringing in more Russian-speaking volunteers, and one of the things that's been so amazing for me is many of the volunteers that we've brought in were themselves recipients, and they've all come back and told me how amazing it's been for them as former recipients to now be able to give back and to share with their children, coming into people's homes and reliving what it meant to have that immigrant experience and to have this organization help them and now be able to help and see what it's like not only to receive but to be on the helping end and to remember what it meant to have this organization help them when they were in a time of need and now be able to help others. And I hope we can continue that. Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to introduce the next speakers, who are the Hoffman boys.
Hello everyone, my name is Sammy Hoffman, and standing next to me are my two brothers, Josh and Henry. Thank you. We began our volunteer work with Maot Chitim 10 years ago. Honestly, as an 8-year-old, I was in it for the candy. But since then, I have really grown to appreciate what Maot Chitim does across all levels. It is true that the planning never stops, but we prepare individualized meals for thousands of people over the course of 2 weeks, and then continue to successfully deliver them to the families year after year and holiday after holiday.
When we would drive out to the people and gave them the food, it always felt right. We were thanked in words, but when we saw the smiles on their faces, we could feel their gratitude. I have been humbled by seeing the tears in some of their eyes. As a Jew, I value my community because I know I have their support, and I take great pride in knowing that I can give the support back to my community. When I approach their doors, they may be strangers, but after entering their homes, I see them as my brothers and sisters, for I am my brother's keeper. Hashomer achi anochi. This is the great lesson of being a part of Maot Chitim.
I have had a unique experience doing Maot Chitim these past several years. My delivery day begins at 4:45 a.m. with my mom stopping for a quick coffee and heading to the warehouse. I work from 5:15 to 8 o'clock, getting set up for other volunteers and packing. Then, at 8 a.m., my dad arrives with a rented U-Haul. I help load the truck and recheck the count of boxes as they are loaded. I also make sure that the boxes aren't stacked too high and won't fall over as we drive. Once we are on the road, I check in with the crew chiefs at each location so they know when to expect our arrival. Finally, I work to unload each box until the day is done. I enjoy seeing my friends at the warehouse and scattered throughout the Chicagoland area at the various buildings. It is my privilege to both work in the warehouse and be a part of the action at the delivery sites.
It was only in our 7th year that we began working in the warehouse instead of making deliveries. It gave me a whole new perspective. All 3 of us are interested in engineering, science, and business. Watching the organization of the warehouse unfold and seeing the principles of mass production functioning at their highest levels, replete with a complex and evolved management structure, has been a different sort of education. The power of harnessing volunteers as young as 6 and as old as those who bore witness to the Holocaust has been amazing to behold. A passing down of kindness, Lador Vador. It may not be the equivalent of an MBA, but behind the scenes experience is priceless. This is but a glimpse into the remarkable impact that helping out a few days a year has had on each of us. We thank each of you for your work in this remarkable cause and look forward to seeing you at the Rosh Hashanah delivery in just a few months. Now, please enjoy a video about Maot Chitim. Thank you.
I think Maot Chitim brings together a lot of people for a single cause. It's not just helping a single group of people, but it's helping the Jewish people as a whole.
Because now we're doing 2 holidays, it is a year-round job.
The emotion, you build it up and you think, okay, I'm giving food, but you're giving much more. You're giving warmth. You're bringing family into these people's homes. You're letting them know everybody cares about them.
Volunteerism is absolutely, positively crucial. You have to remember that we only have one person that is a paid, salaried person, so everybody else is volunteering.
Just the Jewish culture, community aspect of it, it's just an incredible feeling. Just everybody there wants to contribute and make everybody's holiday experience that much better. So it's just such a positive, fun atmosphere, and everybody just really enjoys working together.
It's people with multiple languages and different ages and different backgrounds and different skill sets. We have executives from Fortune 100 companies. We have street sweepers who are working side by side, putting food into boxes and making it all happen. And everybody's just there for one very specific purpose, which is to provide the labor of love to make this happen for all the recipients.
We couldn't do what we do without the volunteers, and the volunteers are the ones that make the difference. And we are who we are, and our Jewish community is who it is because of the volunteers.
Well, one of the nice things about it is that you're actually delivering the food packages to an individual, so that you're getting to meet somebody who is both in need and appreciative and wanting to give back.
And just the smile that's on their face, you can tell how appreciative they are.
It's work, but it's not work because they're having a good time. And then at the end of the day, they can say, oh, I fed 15,000 people. We provided enough food for 15,000 people. People are in shock when they come and see all the food that's at the warehouse. You can't even imagine. It's one thing to go to somebody's home and deliver a meal. It's another thing to see the amount of food that you start the day out and it's piled high, and then at the end of the day, there's nothing left.
While the organization's been around for over 100 years, it's not your father's Maot team anymore. There's still a lot of energy. There's a lot of nice people, some great people to meet at this, of all ages.
Really enjoyed watching it. I mean, it was really great. It was, really uplifting.
Hi, my name is Joellen Stolier, and I am the executive director. And actually, thank you. I'm technically the only employee of Maot Chitim, but clearly, look around you. I can't do this alone. Look at this place. I mean, look around you. Look at everybody out here. It's amazing. And look what they did to the warehouse. If you were here at the warehouse and it was packing, this doesn't look like a warehouse. It looks like a party room. It's beautiful. So thank you to everybody. You guys really show us that we're a community that cares. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce our keynote speaker, J.B. Pritzker, whose name is synonymous with volunteering and philanthropy. J.B. is known for his commitment to helping others. Some of his projects include building a nonprofit small business incubator called 1871 that created multiple new jobs in Illinois, providing children of low-income families with quality preschool and child care opportunities, expanding the state school breakfast program to tens of thousands of students in lower-income school districts, and closer to home and closer to our hearts, because we now serve close to 1,000 Holocaust survivors. JB is instrumental in the creation and building of the Illinois Holocaust Museum, so we will never forget. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and my privilege to introduce J.B. Pritzker.
Well, thank you so much. What a kind introduction, and good morning, everybody. Good morning. Terrific. No, we can do better than that, like a black church. Come on. Good morning. There we go. Nicely done. I want to tell you that, I grew up in a home with parents who cared deeply about social justice and who demonstrated to my brother and my sister and me how important it was for us to recognize how fortunate that we were. Great grandchildren of refugees of a pogrom. Our family easily could have been wiped off the face of the earth. The Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, how many of you know HIAS? HIAS made possible my family's emigration to this country, and we landed right here in Chicago, almost by accident, because they sent us to a place called Clinton, Iowa. And my great-grandfather got off the train in Clinton, Iowa, had no money, and the family, the sponsoring family, put them up overnight, and my great-grandfather found out there were no jobs in Clinton, Iowa, so asked, where's the nearest big city, someplace called Chicago. And so they got on a train and ended up in Chicago. It was at some point after landing in Chicago, the kindness of a stranger that saved my great-grandfather's life. He caught pneumonia in his first winter here in Chicago at age 10. And little Nicholas was admitted to the then Michael Reese Hospital, where they burned his clothes because they were lice infested. And he was there for weeks recovering from pneumonia. And thank God that he recovered. And when he left the hospital, the doctor at the hospital gave him a new set of clothes. And with a smile said to him, "Here's $1, go make something of yourself." Well, as a side note, my great-grandfather Nicholas's son, my grandfather, A.N. Pritzker, told that story when he endowed the Pritzker School of Medicine, because it was that dollar that got his father started on a career. My parents taught us that giving money was important, but it wasn't the only way that you could perform tzedakah. We were regularly taken to synagogue, which, by the way, my parents helped to build, to engage in every form of volunteerism that you can imagine, and all of you can imagine because you're doing it. Clothing drives and toy collections and boxing food for Jews and non-Jews alike, kids and adults who just needed a little helping hand and a caring person to talk to. I watched the joy on my mother's face as she performed these volunteer tasks, and of course I was doing it with her, but her pride could be seen, as immense, and every time we would do it, her pride in the work that she was doing and in the fact that she had her children there doing it with her. And I must say it had a big impression on me. So what were the lessons learned by us? It's an obligation for those of us who can to give and to do good. But giving and volunteering is also good for the soul. And yes, it can help feed the hungry and clothe the naked and shelter those without homes. It can help mend a tired and broken spirit. But it's also a selfless act that greatly benefits the community overall, the spirit of a community in which you live. And it helps fulfill our obligations as Jews to repair the world. Watching and listening to my parents about volunteerism was hugely important to my sisters, my brothers, and my development as kids. And we lost our parents when they were relatively young and when we were relatively young. So at age 17, after both my parents were gone, I searched for and found great mentors to learn from. I was lucky to find people who cared enough to help guide me in the world. And I continue to this day, I'm 52 years old, I continue to look for and find great mentors. And I thought today I would tell you a story about one of them, and some of you may know him. It's a story about a Holocaust survivor who recruited me to help lead the building of the Illinois Holocaust Museum. It's not the story of his captivity or the horrors that he experienced 75 years ago as a child. It's instead a story about who he is today. I got a call one day from a fellow you may know named Michael Ian Bender from Skokie, who was on the board of the Holocaust Memorial Foundation of Illinois, which is the predecessor to the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center. And he asked me if I would take a meeting with two Holocaust survivors, Lisa Derman and Sam Harris. So as a favor to a friend, Michael, I took the meeting. And a week later, they both showed up in my office, Lisa and Sam. And truly, two of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Sam began the meeting by taking off his watch and putting it on the table in front of him and saying, "I just need 3 minutes of your time." And what I didn't know was he had been an insurance salesman in his lifetime, so he was lying to me. He explained to me that there was a law in Illinois mandating Holocaust education in public schools, and that the state hadn't provided any money to fulfill that mandate, but schools were nevertheless required to do it, teachers too. And he said they had a small museum on Main Street. Some of you may remember Main Street in Skokie, a very small museum, and they had the survivors had put their own, things that they'd collected over the years into that museum, and they were serving about 10,000 kids every year who would come in school buses to see the museum and to learn about the Holocaust. And the survivors were going around to high schools and junior high schools and telling their stories to try to educate young people about the Holocaust. And Sam said to me, "We need your help. We want to build a world-class major museum to help fulfill the mandate in the state of Illinois." By the way, Illinois was the first state in the country to have a Holocaust education mandate. There are now, I think, 23 states. But he said that he wanted me to help build this new museum and help lead it. And I said, well, okay, what have you put together? Tell me how much effort you've put in and where you are in the process. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, do you have an architect? Do you have a location? Do you have support from community leaders or from political leaders, or where are you in the process? He said, no, we don't have any of those things. And I said, well, gosh, you've got to put some of those things together, because there's no way you're going to get this thing off the ground without the beginning of the process here. So, they were kind and they shook my hand and they left. And I really honestly thought I would never see them again. But if you know any Holocaust survivors, you know I was dead wrong. And so a few months later, I got a call from Sam, and Sam said, can we come back and see you? I just need 3 minutes of your time. And so he came in, and he and Lisa sat down, and they said to me, okay, we did it. And I said, you did what? And he said, well, the list of things you told us to do. And I couldn't remember for the life of me what I had said. But he said, you said we had to get an architect. We got an architect, Stanley Tigerman. You said we had to find a location. We found a location. You said we had to get support from political leaders. We got the governor on board, and we got legislature on board, and so on. And he went down the list, and he said, now will you come lead the Holocaust Museum for us? So I had really put myself in a bind now. And as far as, I'm an attorney, and I think I actually entered into a contract at that moment. So I agreed, and instead of 3 minutes, it took us 9 years to build that museum. But I saw the same tenacity and grit and sense of purpose at every day over those 9 years that I worked with them and with the many Holocaust survivors who were involved, and I've come to love Sam and Lisa, Oliver Sholem, and the survivors that I worked with. They are like family to me now. And now I want to fast forward for you to a day a few years ago when I got a call from Sam who said, I'm receiving an award from a synagogue in Long Grove, Illinois, where his children live. And he said, would you come and present the award to me? And I've done this before, and presenting an award's very easy because, it's, if you know the person you're giving the award to, you just can tell a story about the person and then hand them the award and you're done. So that seemed pretty easy to me, and of course I love Sam, and of course I was going to agree to do it. So on the appointed day, which was Martin Luther King Day, by the way, I drove out to Long Grove, which I don't think at that point I had ever actually driven to before. They sometimes call it long commute. And I showed up, and I thought, and as I was driving there alone, I thought, how many people could possibly be here on a Monday night at a synagogue in Long Grove? It's got to be 40 people. I mean, how many people are going to come out on a Monday night? So I arrived there, and the parking lot was absolutely jam-packed. And I walked inside, and there were 400 people inside, which was shocking to me. So I was greeted by the rabbi, who then showed me to the second row, and everybody sat down, and the speaking program started. And as the speaking program is starting, they handed down the aisle the programs for the ceremony. And so I grabbed one and handed it on. I was in the middle of the aisle, and so, I casually opened it. Somebody had started speaking, and I casually opened the program, and the program had about 8 things on it. But in the center, in big letters, with a box around it, it said, keynote speaker, J.B. Pritzker. Yeah, and honestly, I had nothing. I had like a story in my head about Sam that I'm now going to tell, but it's keynote speaker, 20 minutes. I'm not sure what you're supposed to do as a keynote speaker, but it's not a minute. And it's Martin Luther King Day, for goodness sake. So, you can't just say, anything. You have to say something meaningful. So there I was in the middle row, panicking, complete panic. I was sweating. I didn't know the people on either side of me, and I had nothing. I didn't have an iPhone. There weren't any iPhones, I don't think, when this happened, and there was nothing. I had not a pen, a piece of paper, and I was just in a panic, and I'm thinking, what can I do? What can I do? And something would pop in my head, and then it would leave immediately, and I couldn't remember it. So finally, they call my name. It's time for me to go, and I have absolutely nothing in my head. And they say, ladies and gentlemen, J.B. Pritzker. And so, I get up and I'm sliding down the aisle, wondering, how on earth I'm going to do this. And I walked up to the stage and I grabbed tight to the podium and I looked at everybody and I really thought of like that Brady Bunch episode where they told somebody to imagine everybody in their underwear. Because I didn't know what to do, 400 people. And it immediately something came into my head, and it was that when I'd left home that day to go to Long Grove, on the table was a newsletter from the Crazy Horse Monument. Does anybody here know what the Crazy Horse Monument is? Good. Okay. So I saw this thing on the way out, and that popped into my head. Why did I have that, by the way? Because my wife is from South Dakota. When I go to South Dakota, by the way, the Jewish population doubles. So that's the only thing in my head. So I said, well, does anybody here know, 400 people, I said, does anybody here know who Korczak Zielkowski was? Sure in my head that nobody could possibly know. And of course there's one guy, in the way back who's raising his hand, he knows who Korczak is. And I said, nobody? Okay, good. And I proceeded to tell the story of Korczak Zielkowski, which I'm going to tell you quickly now. And that was, the Korczak Zielkowski was the sculptor who had worked on now it's leaving my head, the famous monument in South Dakota. Yes, Mount Rushmore, thank you. So he had worked on it as one of the many, many sculptors and workers on that. And he had gone back to New York after building Mount Rushmore, being part of that team. And he received a letter from the Lakota Indian tribe who basically wrote him and said, I don't know how they picked him, by the way, but they wrote him and said, you're a sculptor, we've now had this thing built on our land that represents all the great white people in the United States, but we don't have a monument to our great leader, Crazy Horse. Would you come help us build a monument to Crazy Horse? So, for whatever reason, Korczak Zielkowski picked up on his own and moved to South Dakota with no money, and the Lakota Indians had no money, and the government wasn't providing any money for this either. And he moved out into the middle of nowhere and proceeded to try to find a mountain that you could carve into Crazy Horse. And he had come up with this great model for it, which was Crazy Horse on a horse, with the full headdress pointing, and he's got a spear, and it's fabulous. So he picks a mountain 10 times the size of Mount Rushmore. And he's by himself. And he has no money, and he sets up a tent, and he proceeds to buy a bunch of dynamite, and he starts blasting away because you have to somehow get it in a form where you can start chiseling it, but he just picks a huge mountain and starts blasting away. And this is about the 1950s, so he's blasting away every day, blasting away. It's a huge mountain, and he does this into the 60s, just blasting away at the mountain, getting it all ready to sculpt. Taking private donations if people were willing to give them. He, by the way, insists that his assistant, Ruth, move there to help him, and she moves from New York, and then he marries her immediately. I guess the only woman within hundreds of miles, I'm sure. So they get married and they have kids there, and he's blasting away at the mountain with very little money and does that into the 70s, blasting away at the mountain. And he blasts away into the 80s. Now, I'm telling you this story today, but standing in front of that synagogue, I had no idea where I was going. I'm just telling a story because I got to fill 20 minutes. And so I'm talking about he's blasting away, and I'm literally in my head going, I don't know where I'm going. And he blasts away, and I'm telling the story, and I say he blasts away into the 80s, and then he dies. Never sculpting, but he gets the mountain sort of semi-ready, he and his wife. So now I'm thinking, I don't know where to go from here. But at that moment in the synagogue, God showed up and put it in my head. And it was, I said, why do you think he was blasting away at the mountain for all those years? He had to know that he wasn't going to finish this in his lifetime. And I said, he's blasting away. Why? Because he's got a mission. Because he knows it may not finish it in his lifetime, but he's got to keep going. He's got to do it because he committed to do it, because it's important to do. Just like Martin Luther King, blasting away at the mountain, right? Knows he's not going to defeat bigotry and hatred in his lifetime, but he's going to blast away at the mountain because that's who he was. Just like Sam Harris, the Holocaust survivor, is black. You can imagine, I'm all of a sudden thinking, I am a great orator. Wow. And so I finished up the story, and I got a standing O from 400 people, and it made me think maybe I should never write a speech again. I'll just show up and tell a random story about something, and it'll work. But I tell you that story and the story of Sam Harris because the story of Korczak Ziolkowski, of course, is a story about persistence. It's steadfastness in the face of challenges, because it had to be incredibly difficult over those many years. And it's also a story about the stubbornness that he had on behalf of the Lakota people who suffered so greatly and who just needed something in their lives and on their land that was a representation of their pride and their dignity. And it was an important thing to do. And if Korczak had not stood fast as a volunteer on their behalf, and he really did volunteer, their dream never could have been realized. Sam Harris, my mentor and friend, overcame his own pain to tell his own story of Holocaust survival to so many people over decades, to tell the story of the death of his family, so that others would learn to fight bigotry and hatred and intolerance. And he persisted for those decades as a volunteer. He never got paid. He's never been paid for it. And it was his perseverance and that of his fellow survivors that ultimately led to the building of the Illinois Holocaust Museum. Not me, them. Sam has made an enormous difference in the world. Today, more than 50,000 kids visit that museum every single year to learn to fight bigotry and hatred and intolerance and learn those universal lessons of the Holocaust. And thousands of teachers go there to learn to take it back to their classrooms every day. And by the way, judges go there, and every single Chicago police cadet is now required to go through a program at the Illinois Holocaust Museum. I mean, think of the many, many, many people that Sam Harris and the survivors have impacted, including me. So here's what I want to say to you. Your volunteerism on behalf of others is an example. It's an example like my mother gave to me, taking me to pack boxes to clothing drives and toy drives. And the joy that she exhibited to me affected me. It is the effect that Sam has had on me too, and the many survivors. So your persistence isn't just about the service that you're doing for the people that you're delivering to. Your persistence is meaningful to them for sure, but it's also meaningful to the people around you, to your children that do this with you, to your fellow community members, to the people who are standing next to you doing it, by the way. It gives them strength and courage to do it. You're advancing the cause of repairing the world, and you're giving it to another generation, like my mother did to me, like Sam has done for me. We're all incredibly grateful for the work of Maot Chitim, and I'm personally grateful for the time that I've gotten to spend with you this morning. I want to just tell you quickly the epilogue to the Korczak Zielkowski story so that you can go home knowing what happened. So lest you be concerned that Korczak Zielkowski spent his life dedicated to a cause that would never lead to fruition, you should know that 7 of his 10 children, along with his now widow, have been hard at work since his death in 1982. And the blasting away is completed. The family has been able to carve and shape the face of Crazy Horse Monument. I was at Crazy Horse a few years ago, and I asked Korczak Zielkowski's wife, Ruth, who was still there, age 92 at the time. I asked her when it would finally be finished because, you know, decades, right, half a century. And she looked at me with like enormous confidence and said, 2030. And so Korczak's dream and the dream of the Lakota tribe anyway will finally be realized, and I encourage all of you to go see it and to be reminded of the importance of what you do here today and the impact that you have on the world by virtue of your volunteerism. It's truly an amazing story, yours is, of perseverance. Thank you very much for having me today.
I promise I'm the last speaker. 109 years ago, Maot Chitim of Greater Chicago made its first Pesach delivery. About 25 years ago, we became one of the only Maot Chitim organizations in the world to add a second delivery by Rosh Hashanah. Beginning last year, through our partnership with Agudat Yisrael of Illinois, we were able to add 3,000 additional recipients. We also partner with the Illinois Holocaust Museum to hold model seders, holiday parties and breakfasts for Holocaust survivors, and with Misericordia to throw model seders and Hanukkah parties for the residents. Throughout all those years and our ever-expanding reach, the bedrock and foundation of everything we do has been the dedication and support of you, our volunteers. May God bless you. May God bless each of you with the joy and happiness that you help bring to those in need. Thank you very much. There's plenty of food left if you want to take. You could take the plants from your tables if you would like, and there's a parting gift as you leave. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
My 3 grandchildren and my wife and I, we are delivering food for Maot Chitim. I have been